in your plan, we are going to actually start with page 3. So if you all turn to page 3 and 4, because that talks about the process. Starting next year, we will use this plan, and you will be in one of 3 categories next year. Usually there's only going to be 2, tenured and non-tenured. So if you look at page 3 and 4, it's the colored pages that look like that. Okay? And when you get online and you get on the evaluation tool, like the TCR, you see that under the forms, it's underlined. If you click on that, it will automatically take you to the site, and it'll print out that, and it'll have that form ready for you to fill out. Okay, yeah.
Are we able to fill? We're still able to fill that out online, though.
Yes. All the forms you'll be able to fill out online, print them out, hand them to us. Yes. Okay. So there'll be one of 3 categories for next year: tenured, non-tenured, or fast-track tenured. The reason we had to agree on a fast-track tenured, if you did not get evaluated this year, okay, if you didn't get evaluated this year, you will be evaluated next. If you're tenured, you'll be evaluated next year under the fast track. Otherwise, every tenured teacher will be on the exact same cycle, and we'd be doing every teacher every year at the same time. Well, no, next year we'd do everybody. The next year we would have not only the non-tenures, then the next year we'd have everybody, and that's not possible for us. It's going to be a lot more time intensive for us. It's going to be a lot more time for us to be in your classrooms, a lot more time to be out, so it wouldn't be possible. So the Joint Committee agreed that we would fast track the tenureds that did not get evaluated this year. Okay? So the first cycle we'll talk about is the non-tenureds. Okay? The non-tenured cycle. The schedule will be is every year, a non-tenured will be evaluated every year until they become tenured. Right? Beginning of the year, you have everybody, whether you're in a non-tenured, let me back up. Non-tenured, you're evaluated every year. It's a 1 year, you're evaluated that year. Tenured is a 2-year cycle. Okay? But it starts next year for everybody. We will have a beginning of the year conference where you come up with your SMART goal for every teacher next year. If you're tenured on the 2-year cycle, it just means we'll do some informal observations. We'll be observing you, but we won't do a formal observation next year. Your evaluation will not, your final evaluation will not be done until the end of the 2nd year. But we'll be observing, but it's a 2-year cycle. In that 2-year cycle is when some of this stuff will be taking place. If you're non-tenured, you will be on a 1-year cycle. So every year you will get an evaluation at the end of the year. You'll be observed. We'll talk about how you're going to be observed, but you'll get evaluated. If you're a fast-track tenured for next year, you will get an evaluation. Questions? Okay. So, the non-tenured. Okay. Everybody next year. This is a non-tenured, beginning of the year conference. You'll have that in August or September. So we'll be meeting with every non-tenured teacher in August or September. Okay? During that meeting, you'll fill out a TCR, which we will talk about, Teacher Career Reflection Form. Okay? You'll fill out your classroom profile form, which we'll talk about and go through. Okay? Then, you will have 2 formal observations. Okay? At least 2 formal observations. We have one in October, December, January, February. That's not set in stone, but that's kind of going to be a guide for us to try to get these done. Okay, so you have 2 formal observations to where we're going to have a pre-conference. We're going to have a post-observation conference, which you have to fill out a post-observation reflection form. And then you'll fill out, we'll have our post-observation we talk about. Okay? Then you'll have your formal observation. That'll be one formal observation. We will be doing many, many, many informal observations. The goal is for us to be in your room informally 10 times. What is the difference between a formal observation and an informal observation? Formal is 45 minutes, a minimum of 45 minutes. Okay? That's where we're going to be collecting evidence. What do you do? What do we see? How are the kids engaged? What are the kids doing? What are you doing? That's where we're collecting evidence. Okay? So there'll be a minimum of 45 minutes of one class period. It'll include, what? Formal. I'm sorry, for formal, 45 minutes. It includes a pre-observation conference that will take place no more than 5 work days prior to the observation. Okay? A lot of the things we saw had 3, because it's going to be tough for us to get sort of scheduled. We're going to be learning. We asked for 5 days just to give us some extra time. So at least 5 days before that, we'll have a pre-observation conference. And we'll go over some of these things with you that I'll show you later. Right? Then, there must be a post-observation conference at least 10 days, 10 work days after the observation. A lot of the things said 5 or 7. We begged for 10 just to give us more time. We'll hopefully get it done sooner than that, but 10 days gives us some extra time in case it's busy. Especially for, Mr. Slingler, who has so many people to observe, it's going to be difficult for him to get all of this done, and we're working on a plan to kind of share the load a little bit. But all of us are going to have 15 or 20 evaluations to do, and that's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. Okay? You must receive written feedback following a formal observation before or during the post-conference. We'll try to give you some feedback beforehand, or we'll give it to you during the conference. The teacher and evaluator must complete any appropriate paperwork prior to the conferences. So you need to have it filled out before you come in there. Right? That's a formal observation. Informal observations, which we will do many. They suggested we do 10 per. We should give 10 informal observations in your classroom before every evaluation. I'm not sure we're going to be able to pull that off, but that's what we're supposed to do, 10. Now, what is an informal observation? It's not subject to a minimum time requirement. Does not need to be announced. There are no conferencing requirements around the informal observation. So let's just, when we walk through your room, we see something. You'll probably see us with our iPads because we're supposed to have a fancy program we're going to be able to use to document stuff. It's supposed to organize it for us. We'll see. We haven't been trained on that yet. We'll see if it works. And then the next thing about an informal observation is a teacher or an evaluator may request a conference after that. You see us walk through, you may say, hey, I'd like to have a conference about what you saw. Hey, did you see something? I'd like to have a conference. You can request it, and we can request it. Hey, I was in your room today. I'd like to have a conference. We can schedule that for later today. I'd like to have a conference about what I saw. Okay? You must receive written feedback of any evidence within 10 work days after the informal observation. If we collected evidence, if we jotted things down that we're going to use in your evaluation, we have to give you written feedback on that. Hey, I was in your room today. These are the things I saw. We don't have to have a conference. I just have to provide them for you if we do it informally. Okay? So if we see something we're going to use in your evaluation, we have to provide that for you. Okay? Questions on the difference? Yes, sir.
I think that there will be no, with that evidence, there will be no indication of where that has been rated. It'll just be, here's evidence that we collected that we're going to use.
Right. If you get something and you say, well, we talk about this, and you want a conference, you can tell us, we can give you a conference. But it's just what we wrote down. It's not what we wrote down is excellent, what we wrote down is proficient, what we wrote down is basic. It's just what we've collected. So you have it. So there's no surprises later on as we go over the evaluation and we go through all that evidence. Okay? Good. All right. A couple other things with the non-tenures. You see mid-year data review. That is something that's going to take place when student growth comes on. Hopefully 2 years from now. Maybe 3. Because that's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be tough. But the mid-year data review would be something maybe when we're going over student growth. How we're going to measure student growth. In the mid-year data, we would say, here's where you're at, or you would tell us where you're at. So that's really going to be basically when that comes on. It could still happen now. We call you in and say, we're going to review your goals here. Maybe we need to make some changes after what I've seen, so we can have a mid-year data review with you. Right? And that's where we're going to revisit the TCR, which we'll talk about, revisit your professional growth plan. We may say, this is what your growth plan said. You've already done that. Let's change it. Let's make some changes to challenge a little more or whatever. Okay? And then at the end of the year, we'll have an end of the year summative conference. We'll go over all the feedback, all the things we have. Talk about what we have as your final rating. And your final rating will be excellent, proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. It'll be one of those 4. Right? And we're going to walk through how we get that. So that's for non-tenure. Let's go to the tenure. Any questions? Comments from anybody that was on the committee?